Hello, everyone. Welcome to PCI DSS program, Take Control of the Controls. I'm going to start out my session by avoiding risk and not going down that step, so I'm going to be back here if you want to see me. My name is Jeni German, as you just heard. I'm a digital security analyst for WM and have been a PCIP since 2015. Waste Management is a PCI DSS Level 1 merchant. Most of my training and experience in the PCI realm comes from a Level 1 merchant point of view. However, one thing I've learned is that there are a few things that work for any size DSS program, regardless the size or complexity of the business or the expanse of the assessment. Today, I'm going to talk about a few of those things that we're doing at WM that seems to be helping our program along. Now, I am curious, I'd like to know how many of y'all out there have a PCI DSS program at your business that you consider to be robust and fluid and working just beautifully. Okay then, maybe there'll be a pebble here for some people. I was afraid y'all were going to be able to tell me something, which would be good too. So here's some things that we're doing that are working. First, bringing together the right people and the right size set of people. Oh gosh, let me back up for a minute, okay? I like to work puzzles. And for me, the PCI DSS is very much like a puzzle. When I get a new puzzle, I turn out the pieces on the table, and I have 1,000 randomly sized and colored pieces and shapes that will come together to make a clear picture. When I open the DSS control set, I have hundreds of controls that must be affirmed to be in place throughout the business, control owners identified and assigned. How do I turn that into a clear picture? One way is to bring together the right people and the right size set of people to be my partners in the PCI DSS compliance program. Can't do this by myself. Secondly, I have to have an annual PCI DSS task and activities calendar to keep up with stuff. And lastly, learning how to consolidate control owner, like controls, under one control owner to just make the evidence collection more efficient for everybody. And in the end, I'll wrap it up with 3 takeaways, of which I hope you can find a pebble of something to take with you back to your compliance program. The first thing that happens when I start a puzzle, I'm separating the pieces, turning them over, and I build out the edges. Building out the edges gives me a scope, gives me definition and boundaries, and a place within which I can build something that makes sense. The PCI DSS program is very much like that, in that we have to start with defining our scope. To accurately define the scope of the cardholder data environment, as we've heard a few times today, I have to find all the people, the processes, and the technologies that touch the CDE. The process of reviewing the controls, going through the controls, finding out who does them, where they're performed, assigning an owner, is this or is this not? That's going to help me define the scope and define the people who are going to help me answer the controls. At the end of the scoping exercise, I'm going to come away with, right now, 3 required pieces of documentation. The critical inventory from requirement 2.4, the network diagram from requirement 1.1.2, and the data flow diagram from requirement 1.1.3. Note, as we've already heard today, PCI DSS version 4 has a new scoping requirement, 12.5.2, which will let us do this in a most definite manner every year. I recommend that you start looking at that now. Now that I've seen who's doing what out there, I've met a lot of the people who are going to be involved with the controls at some level. Who do I want on my program team? I need to create a program team first thing. The first kind of people I want on my team are the subject matter experts, the SMEs, the people that perform the controls every day, the person who performs the pre-employment background checks, the person who monitors and reviews the audit logs. Those people perform the controls. They will have the proof when needed for the assessment. I want the SMEs. Sadly, I can't have all the SMEs. There's a lot of them. What I can have instead are a couple of managers who represent a bulk of the processes over which we might need to have control. 2, maybe, managers on my team. Managers also give me a point of escalation if I have any tactical roadblocks come up on the project team. The last kind of people that I have are the stakeholders, the business process owners. Those people own PCI DSS compliance on a business level. They can make program decisions, not just project team decisions. Some site calls up and says, oh, we're having a problem. We're going to start writing down all the credit card numbers for a while until we sort this out. No, you're not until you talk to the business process owners. That's a decision that they will make because that greatly impacts our scope and our whole program. They also have a relationship with the people who make our program go, the external partners, the payment card processors, and the collections, and the banks, and the service provider, and all those people. Now, once I have all these great people together, and for us it's about 6 or 8, depending on what we're doing, how am I going to use them? Am I just going to start sending them emails to ask them stuff? No. First of all, I'm going to create an alliance of all the team members. There are people from all over the business at different levels of leadership. They may or may not know each other. They may or may not realize the contribution that each person makes. So we'll get real clear on that up front. Everybody on this team has a contribution to make. This is what we're going to do. And this is how we're going to do it. Here are the tools we have to work with. Meetings, virtual conference calls, and email. We're still hybrid, so we're in and out of the office, and we may never all be there at the same time. So I've put a recurring meeting every 2 weeks on everybody's calendar. The entire program team is invited as optional. 2 days before the meeting, I send out an agenda and say, oh, this week we're going to talk about the source of truth for the CDE user list. What is that exactly? Which report is the one we need to be leaning on? Meeting time, the right people show up, we have the meeting. After the meeting, I send out comprehensive meeting notes. This is who came, this is what we talked about, this is what we decided, and here's your action item for next week, because next week we're going to talk about something else. And we do that if we need to, and everybody's okay with that. Also, I keep everybody copied on all those superfluous emails that go around wanting information that's not agenda item worthy, but just information that we need to know. What's that new subnet number over there? Or whatever kind of information is going around. Keep everybody copied because I never know where the tribal knowledge is coming from, and I don't know who knows what. If everybody knows what we're looking for, we got a better chance of finding it. Also, we're having quarterly BAU calls with our assessor, our QSA. Business as usual calls, I call these my guardrails. There are things that change too fast in any PCI scoped environment. There's things that are going to happen next year we need to talk about, things that we see coming. We get together with the QSA once a quarter to make sure that everybody's on the same track and that we stay in compliance. Okay, things are starting to come together. I've had a chance to review the controls and get the people together. One thing I've noticed is that there are a lot of moving parts and pieces to any PCI annual activities. The assessment. I have to have a calendar. I'm going to put everything on the calendar. Everything PCI related goes on the calendar. For example, when do I want my project team in place? I need them to start making decisions. When are we going to do our assessment? I'm not going to decide that. The team has to decide that. The assessment for us, per my QSA, is a 2-month period in the year where the assessor asks for proof that controls are in place and working, and I provide that proof, or the SMEs provide that proof. As a level 1 merchant, we engage a third-party service for our annual assessment. That comes with a quality assessment episode that happens after the QSA finishes writing our ROC. Once the report on compliance is complete, it goes through his QA process, which could take up to a month. My assessment period is booked at 3 months in the year. That 3 months can be any time that works for us. Our agents are ready to work with us anytime. So we've got it at the time of the year when it works for us to do it. It doesn't interfere with other business activities. I also put deadlines. When do I want my scoping and documentation complete? We've heard today several times that has to be done first. An assessment cannot happen without the scope being defined. That means my control owners need to be identified and assigned. When do I want to send out the request for evidence? When do I want it back to me or to the assessor, however we're doing it that year? What dates do I have to meet out there in the world? All of that goes on the calendar. Also, I put all of my meetings, the program team meetings, the BAU meetings, the process interviews. Anytime something happens, anywhere, we have to go look and see, did this change our PCI, our DSS scope? Did this change? Maybe it took us out of scope. We need to look and see, because that does happen every once in a while. All the process interviews, all of the ad hoc activities. My tools are not working, and I'm having to have vendor meetings, and all of it, anything that's PCI related. This is working for me in 3 ways. First, it helps me to document the effort and the resources required to pull off this program. It gives me a history of what we did, who it took to do it, and all of that, which that stuff is also going to be great input for my project team next year. That's what I'll use to make improvements on the team, whatever that looks like. And also, it just helps keep me out of the fire. If I don't have it in the calendar, it's not going to happen. And that's particularly important when it comes to things like time-sensitive deliverables. Some of the controls are very persnickety about when they want to be performed. For example, the annual, the approved scanning vendor scans, we have to have a certification every quarter that says we're compliant on our external e-commerce sites. 90 days is what my QSA is looking for, and if it's 92 days, that is not a pass. That has to be done on time. The firewall rule reviews around the CDE have to be done every 6 months. The penetration tests have to be done every year, but not just every year, they have to be done 12 months apart. May last year and September this year just hardly is not fitting the requirement. As a note, the PCI DSS version 4.0 has a new section called the timeframes description, where they define every time frame used in the DSS. We have already adopted this because it brings such clarity and certainty. It also has a definition of that pesky scoping thing called significant change. There's a clear definition of what that means. No more arguing about it. As the PCI DSS landscape, let's see what we've got here. As the landscape becomes clearer, I'm starting to look for ways to integrate the processes. One thing I've noticed about the control set is they seem to come in 3 types. The first part will say, show me your policy that says you must do this thing. The second part will say, show me proof that you did this thing. And the third part says, interview personnel to make sure that we did what we said, how we said we were going to do it. Those are the same control, but there are 3 different aspects of that control. We've got a role now called policy admin, which is going to take all of those show me your policy controls. We may have to provide 3 dozen policies during assessment. They all have to have an annual review. They don't all live the same life cycle or belong to the same teams, so somebody has to ride herd or manage all of those policies to make sure they're what we need every year. The policy admin's going to get all the policy questions. The SME is going to get the one that says, show me you did this. And then, like the policy admin, the PCI admin is going to get the one that says, interview personnel to make sure we did this thing like we said. That's more of an assurance, oversight role, and that to me belongs with somebody on the PCI admin team. If there's ever any evidence requested that doesn't exist, I have to look for a gap in my security defenses. That's something that I'm probably going to escalate to a manager. Why we don't have this? Why not? Can you help me find this? We have a team, we have a scope. We may have been through a whole assessment night. Right now, we have a fluid process being created, and we've learned a few things. One thing is that it takes more than a minute to build an effective DSS compliance program. And it might take a few tries at getting the team together. Whatever it takes, one of the biggest things is learning to keep on top of the scope. Everything about the PCI scope, the people, the processes, and the technology are in constant transition, and we have to keep up with that. That's just something we have to learn how to do. Also, we've learned that it takes a team. PCI DSS program is not a one-person show. Nobody can do it by themselves. Timing is critical on everything involved in the DSS. Use a program calendar and let it work for you. It works for me, is what I'm saying. Functional roles might streamline evidence collection, as with the policy admin, PCI admin roles that we're working with right now. Bonus takeaway. If evidence is requested and it does not exist, they're probably either it's just not being reported on, which is not likely. There's probably a gap in the security defenses. Follow that, drive that fix. So I have to follow that and drive that fix because I don't want to be reacting to it. I don't want to be reacting to it when it becomes a problem. Drive the fix and take control of the controls. Thanks for letting me share those things today.